Okay, welcome everyone to the third and the most awaited technical session of the day. So with us, Vinai Kopp, the founder of Meet TV, and Willem Wigman, developer at the Hyva themes. So today they will going to share insight about the Hyva themes and all about the Hyva. So let me hand over to Willem. He will start first, and then he will hand over to Vinay. So Willem, let's start.
Yes, thank you. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. Very honored to be talking to you today. So you might have heard something about the thing that I started last June and announced in October, which is Hyva Themes, a new front end for Magento, which is half new. We rebuilt the front end based on Luma, keeping the good parts and throwing out the lesser parts. I've been joined by Vinai a few month or two ago when he tried out Hyva and got excited and wanted to do something similar on the admin end. So we have a combined session now where I'll first show what we've been doing with the front end, and then Vinai will show what he has been doing with the admin part. I'm Willem Wigman. Have been working at Internet now for 2 years. Have been doing Magento development for nearly 10 years. And I decided I wanted to go into a different direction than where Magento is going lately. And I am not that happy with the path of PWA and deprecating the current front end. And accidentally, with a side project, I've started to change that. So let me present you an alternative to both Luma and PWA Studio. There we go. So Hyva Themes is a new front end for Magento 2. It doesn't have any of the buzzwords. It's not headless. It's not a single page application, and it's not a PWA. And why do I say yet? Because the distinction is a PWA is not much more than a website with a service worker and a manifest file. So you can save it to your computer or to your mobile. The big thing, that the direction that Magento and other PWA solutions are going to is a single page application, which is much more than just a PWA. It means you're building an app. And I'd rather not build apps. I love websites. So what Hyva Themes is a Magento theme in the classical sense. We use PHTML, blocks, layout XML, and it's a complete rebuild of the default PHTML and JavaScript that comes in the form of Luma currently. But as many of you will know, Luma has many issues, has not really got the attention that it deserved over the past 5 years in favor of PWA Studio. So a lot of things could have changed in the current front end in the past 5 years, which sadly didn't happen. So we consider Hyva Themes what Luma could have been, would it have been developed further and improved over time. But you could say that in the past 5 years, Luma hasn't really changed. So we're still at the point where knockout and UI components are there, which no one wants to work with, and they don't perform well in Google. It's super hard to develop with it. You need a lot of specific knowledge, and everything you want to do. Change a button on the checkout, it could take you a day. So we're trying to move away from that. So a global overview of what Hyva looks like right now. We've announced it in October, and we have a demo version up that's purposefully not updated in the previous months, because we want to release it soon and have a real impact with all the updates that we did, and properly present that. So we'll have an announcement about that soon. So a homepage, this is what a category page looks like, a product page with some custom options where price calculations and everything work, a card that uses GraphQL. We really love the implementation of GraphQL. It's super fast and it's fun to work with. But it turns out you don't need a lot of JavaScript to do calls to GraphQL. So that's what we're doing. We're just doing simple requests to the server to fetch data with GraphQL or do mutations, but only where it makes sense. So we have a basic rebuild of what Luma does using server-side render data, and then we enrich the page with a little bit of JavaScript on top of it. And it performs really well. This is the default homepage without varnish, without a CDN, without image optimization. It scores 100 points of all the metrics. And that's not just for the homepage, that's also for a product page. So you see layout shifts, which is becoming one of the most important core vitals for Google for ranking in next May, the 1st of May. We have 0 layout shifts on most of the pages. And that is because we don't render the page with JavaScript. What do we need to render a page? Since we're not building the page with JavaScript, we're not a spa. We don't have to pretend to be a website. We're an actual website with a little bit of HTML, a little bit of CSS, and just a tiny bit of JavaScript on top of it. We have an 18 kilobyte page, so that's the HTML. We have 10 kilobytes of CSS, and we have 9 kilobytes of JavaScript. The rest is 2 GraphQL calls for a product slider and a few images. So you can see there's a load time of 170 milliseconds, and the page completely finishes rendering in 800 milliseconds. There's not really a Magento site out there right now that's this fast on the first render without cached data or whatever. And so far, we've been in a closed beta. We have a few testing agencies that have been trying it out, have been helping accelerating the development. Well, of course, IntegerNet is our main partner. I've developed it together with IntegerNet, which started as my own idea, quickly became a partnership with IntegerNet. And then not much later, Algentos joined. And well, we have a few really exciting agencies, one of the biggest players in the market that have been testing it and working with it for a while now. And well, as you can see, people are super enthusiastic, not only about the performance or what it does, but we really have a strong focus on developer experience. So we want to make developing with Magento fun again and lower the level of entry. We want to make it easier for people to start working with. And to be honest, I've done a lot of React programming. I know how to work with the JavaScript application, and it's fun, but it's hard to get started with. Everything is more complex. The simplest thing takes more time. It's, again, more of the same. Like with Luma, you have to learn a lot of things that are specific to the implementation that you're getting. And we're trying to use tools that come from an ecosystem that have a lot of ready-made solutions already. So UI components that you can copy from Tailwind UI or Alpine.js. So how do we accomplish it? What have we done to get to this point? Simply said, everywhere we can, we reduce complexity and the amount of code that we ship. So you saw in the payload, the amount of data that we're sending to the browser, it's as small as we can. And we honestly believe that if you want to have a big adoption, if you want people to have fun, everything should become less complex. So we're really trying to help starting programmers getting started quicker, but also people with a lot of Magento experience, they get started with Hyva really fast. So it all started with a reset team where we basically took all the XML, all the layout files from core Magento, threw everything into one team, and we commented out all the blocks. So we have a layout override, which basically overrides the default Magento layout file from core, and we take out all the blocks. So when you set your store to the reset team, if you would select the reset team and you go to the front end of your shop, you get an empty head tag and an empty body tag. Everything is stripped. From there, we create a child team. So we have inheritance on the reset team, and then we rebuild the front end from the ground up. So every line of HTML has been rewritten, all the CSS, all the JavaScript from scratch. And as best practice dictates from Magento, we're trying to reduce the amount of blocks that are being used and replace them with view models, which makes your code a lot more flexible and compact, and classes become more portable. So an example of this is here. We have a product page where we're showing product alerts, and where you previously would use the block for the product alert, for the stock or for the price, we just have a block without a class, so it falls back to the default template class, and we assign a template to it. That's all. All the logic goes to the template. This is the template file, one of the two that we have. It's a little bit more boilerplate code maybe in the HTML file, but it's super flexible. I'm going to highlight a few things that are happening in this file. First, you see we introduce a Viewmodel Registry, which means that Fabian Spengler at IntegerNet, he came up with the idea, or we did it together, but he built it to be able to reduce all the XML that we need to use to put a view model inside a HTML file. So currently, if you would have 5 view models in a HTML file, you need to define them all in the layout XML. And if you have 10 blocks on a product page and all these blocks need the same view model, you need to explicitly pass the view model to each block. And that's a lot more work than in this HTML file. We have a view model registry, and that's a global variable, works the same as the block and the escaper variable, and you could use it like this. I want to take my product alert view model, and I require it from the view model registry by passing the class name of my view model. So I do that for my product alert. I do it for current product, which is a new registry for products. I'm going to explain that as well. And then we have a view model that gives us SVG icons. It renders SVG icons inline, but we put all of that outside of the HTML files so that we get super clean templates. So first, the product registry. As Magento dictates, we shouldn't use the registry anymore, the default one. So we've implemented a new registry that works with an observer. Kudos to Vinai Kopp, who had an example of that on GitHub, how to create a new and proper version of a product registry. So when a product page is initialized, there's an observer event, and that sets the product to our current product view model. And we can use it in any HTML file. So wherever we put the HTML file on the page, we can require the current product, call get on it. And if it returns a product, we continue rendering the HTML file. And then you see we use the product alert view model to check whether the stock alert icon should be shown. And here's a simple example for how we render a SVG icon. In this case, it renders a little bell with some CSS classes which define the width, the height, and that it should be displayed inline. So what this does is it reduces the amount of XML that we need. A lot of the logic is moved into view models, which are global, super easy to fetch and get data from. They're reusable. The object manager only initiates them once, so they're very conservative in processing what resources that they need. And every HTML file that we write becomes very portable. So this product alert can be placed anywhere in my XML layout tree, and it works because it depends on the view model. And there's no block that has a lot of responsibilities. We have small view models that have their own responsibility, and we compose them together. So yeah, it's portable, decoupled, and highly reusable. So how did we tackle the usage of JavaScript, which we have a lot of in Luma? In fact, we have megabytes of JavaScript in Luma and megabytes of JavaScript, obviously, in PWA Studio. We started to build pages up fully functional without JavaScript, and then we put JavaScript on top of that to enhance the UI, the user experience and interactions. So we create a menu, and the menu fully works. And then when you add JavaScript to it, you can toggle things, or you can open a sliding mini card. But if JavaScript doesn't work, it falls back to a simple href link. So to make sure that we get the fastest render time and we don't get layout shifts that Google doesn't like, and obviously users don't like, that if you open a page that everything jumps on your screen and you want to click something and then it just jumps away before you can click it. So we render a stable page layout that doesn't require JavaScript, and then we enhance the page. So that's the only way to get a really stable first render as quick as possible, and not have the layout change when JavaScript is being loaded. So here you see the homepage again, and you can see on the right bottom, this is with JavaScript disabled. The layout is exactly the same as when we add JavaScript to it. Same goes for a product page. You don't see the thumbnails because they're rendered from a JavaScript object, but the place that they're going to use is already reserved, so nothing will jump there, but everything, the main image is shown, the navigation is stable, and the product layout is stable because everything is rendered server-side. So it's super fast and it comes to the screen immediately. So this is again without JavaScript, and this is a good example of why you don't need JavaScript. This is still with JavaScript disabled, and this is a form field where we put native validation on. So the browser will render this pop-up that shows you that the field is not valid. And you can put regex expressions in there. You can check for email addresses. You can check for length of the field. You can do basically anything that you want to do with validation that normally is being done with a JavaScript library. You load in 400 kilobytes and you need jQuery, or in case of PWA Studio, you need a lot of JavaScript to do this. Browser form functionalities and form validation have evolved very much, but the world seemed not to have noticed. You can put the add to cart button anywhere on the page, and as long as it references the form that it belongs to, it doesn't even need to be inside that form. So you can address which form should be sent when you click on it. So that's another thing that greatly reduces the amount of JavaScript that we need. And we have a lot of JavaScript that renders in this field. So if you enable JavaScript and you set the quantity, the tier price kicks in. When you select 4 items, the price goes down to $28.80. You can see in the bottom. And then also the price for the customizable option changes because it's 10% discount. So the $3.20 becomes $2.88. And that's all being done with JavaScript. But still, that's UX that we add on top of this native HTML functionality. So that JavaScript is not intrusive. It doesn't cause a layout shift. It just adds extra UX. So this product page is fully functional without JavaScript. So we do all this with Alpine.js, and Alpine.js is a really lightweight copy, you could say, from Vue. Vue is a JavaScript framework that uses a virtual DOM. That means the JavaScript constantly calculates what your page should look like. So it re-renders the DOM dynamically, while a browser nowadays can do that also perfectly. You have a dynamic DOM or you have a DOM control through JavaScript in a browser. So this is what Alpine leverages. They use native browser capabilities to render templates in a loop and take a JavaScript object and use that to render items in the cart or toggle elements in the browser. So this is the only library that we use by default in Hyva. It doesn't mean that you can't add jQuery to it or add a slider library to it, but everything we build is from the perspective of the best performance. So we build sliders with Alpine.js. We build all the components with Alpine.js, and the JS goes inline. So you have no extra server requests, and you can perfectly debug your code in the browser. We don't obfuscate, we don't minimize the code. So in the browser, you can perfectly see what's going on and where something doesn't work or debug it. This is a really simple example of how Alpine.js works with events. You can see on the top is a menu item that's in the header, which shows the cart icon. And when you click it, it fires an event that's called toggle cart. Then we have this section that you see on the right, the HTML. We have a cart drawer, which is a box that's hidden on the side. And as soon as the event toggle cart triggers, it listens for that and sets a variable to open, and it slides in from the side. So that's all user experience that's enhanced with Alpine.js. And this is really simple stuff. It's easy to create really nice animations. As you can see at the right bottom, all these X transition things, they all work. They're controlled by the xShow attribute. So when xShow changes from open to, open is true, if it changes to open is false, these X transitions are triggered and you get an animation in the browser. This is an example of how we work with customer data. We kept it intact from Luma. So you have the section data as being fetched from the server, so that's your customer data for your session. It contains your customer data, your card data, maybe some GTM, Google Tag Manager data. And that's pulled into local storage. It's invalidated once on page load, and then we have an event that triggers private content loaded. And anywhere on the page, you can listen for that private content loaded event and take the data that comes with it. And then if you see here, receive customer data, that receives the data and it takes the card and the customer, and you can do anything with it, what you want. This is a native JavaScript example of how you would receive private content data or the customer section data, and you could display the customer name. But it can go, we use this, for example, to implement Google Tag Manager. So you get the customer data and the card data, you take out the things you need, and then send it to the Tag Manager. Then we use Tailwind CSS, which is a utility-based framework to render CSS, to render your design using utility classes. So you compose your design by using predefined classes, which are very portable. And the best thing about it is that you can compile your CSS and it looks for the classes that you actually used and throws out all the other classes that you didn't use on your project. So we analyze the HTML files in your team, take out the classes that you used, and that becomes your final compiled CSS file. And usually on most of the projects that we see, the final bundle is less than 35 kilobytes. So that's very, very small. And the good thing about Tailwind is that it has this ecosystem of pre-built components. So you have a lot of free websites where you can see all these layouts, and you go to view code, you get the HTML, you copy it into your site. You can readily copy this into a Hyva theme, add some variables to it, so create a widget from it, or just insert your own data, whatever way you want, but you have the layout ready, so you can take footers and headers and call outs, call to actions from all these websites that offer them for free, or you take the official one from Tailwind UI. It costs $250, I think, and you get this very nicely designed components that you can use on your website. And all you need to do then is just start them with some colors and add the content to it. So there's a lot of power in that. So what about third-party extensions? We threw out everything that Luma uses. So you can't use third-party modules without rewriting the require.js and the knockout.js, which proves to be quite simple. Well, not necessarily quite simple, but very doable. The good thing is that we're building an ecosystem within Hyva with the agencies that have joined. So with the agencies that joined, I don't know how I get my timer. I don't know how I can stop it. I will round up soon, round up. Okay, I had a timer set, excuse me. So I know that I have to round up. So we're building an ecosystem with the agencies that joined, but also from Hyva itself. We're going to make an effort after releasing the first version. We're going to make a big effort out of building compatibility modules for the most used components or extensions. So Elastic Suite, the most used MST modules. So we have layered navigation and Google Maps integration and maybe store locator. All these things will make sure that at least one of those is compatible. And as far as what we've seen so far, the amount of JavaScript that you need to build elements like or to create an interface in the front end is a lot simpler these days, because we don't need to take care of Internet Explorer and other older versions of browsers. We have modern JavaScript. It's very much fun to work with. Magento Commerce support is coming up. We're also partnering up with a few of the agencies that joined. We have a prototype of Page Builder. John Hughes from Fisheye is working on that, and a few other agencies as well. So we will have Magento Commerce support, which we focus on after releasing the first version. And we have some other page builders that people are working on that also work really nicely. We have Storyblock from Javier from Mediotype from the UK that works really nicely. And Argentos has a page builder based on Prismic. And at Intergenet, we're working with the Mage on page builder. So we have options for this. What about checkout? I'm going to keep the speed here, but I want to announce that we have a full, we have a React checkout that we're building that's open source. We released that the 15th of October already. We've built a few shops with them, but we're rebuilding it from the top, and we have someone working on that who completely built it up from the bottom. That's Rajiv. He's an amazing React coder. So I just went past the fact that we have a fallback module to use Luma checkout and one-step checkout and everything that's based on Luma. So you can use that just for the checkout experience. So you can have maximum compatibility with shipping providers and with payment providers. But the React checkout will be built out to include a lot of the default payment methods, and is an open source initiative that works with GraphQL and would even work in PWA Studio or in Luma. So that's something that we're working on the side, and Rajiv has been doing great work on that. The rebuild you can find in the develop branch on GitHub. And this is the current state. It has all the main components, needs some styling still, and there's some features that we still need to build in. But this becomes highly customizable. You can put these components anywhere where you want, make a 3-step checkout with this by just adding 3 steps using the same components. And as I said, it's completely headless, works with GraphQL, so it's very portable. So what's next? We're releasing the public beta very soon. We'll have an announcement about that coming up. And after the launch, we focus on commerce features and third-party extensions. And then we want to build a UI library like Tailwind UI, which works out of the box with Hyva themes. So you can take any component for your website, an image gallery or sliders or a menu, you copy it from a UI library into your theme, and it just works. So that's our future dream. And you can find us on Hyva.io, on Twitter, LinkedIn, and we have a demo site up, but please notice that it's not up to date, and we have a big launch where we're going to show the new demo with all the functionalities, and we want to surprise you there. So I'm more or less within my time, minus the time for questions. So I hope this was interesting to you. Contact us at Twitter or LinkedIn, visit our website, and well, stay tuned. Vinai is going to talk about something just as amazing, which is Hyva admin.
Okay, hi everybody. The sun just came out, so I can't see anything. I really miss seeing everybody, and I'm so happy to, that Meet Magento is happening again, and I at least can be part of it virtually. Okay, that's a bit better. I just have to lean back. So let me jump right in, share my screen. So yesterday we had a few issues with screen not updating properly. So if that happens, I hope I'll get an alert on WhatsApp or whatever. But you should be seeing a very, very plain, simple slide. So I decided to go with super simple slides because for me, a lot of this idea of Hyva is about simplicity. And I like simplicity. So Magento is going more enterprise, and that's totally fine and good because Adobe needs enterprise business. That's what they do, right? And of course, it comes with a cost, right? It adds a lot of complexity, satisfying all those enterprise requirements. And don't get me wrong, it's fun to work with it. It's, but it's very complex. It takes a lot of effort to get stuff done. It takes a lot of time to get stuff done. And it takes many people to get stuff done. It's very expensive. And for myself, most of my customers, they're not in this field, right? Sometimes I get to work on it and I like the big enterprise bucks, don't get me wrong, right? But 90% of my business are much smaller companies and merchants. So in the end, what that means is Magento doesn't make decisions thinking of my business. Magento makes decisions thinking of the Adobe business naturally, right? So over the last couple of years, I have become increasingly dissatisfied with Magento, to be honest. So I was kind of frustrated. Things were moving in a direction that I didn't feel was the right direction. But of course, that's only from my perspective. For Adobe, it was exactly the right perspective. So I just wasn't feeling at home very much anymore. I didn't feel heard with my requirements and my customers' requirements. However, Magento is open source, right? And I knew that all along, of course. But when I saw what Willem had done with Hyva, right, for the front end, it was like a light bulb going off in my mind. It's like, yes, of course. What open source gives us is independence. Independence of the company owning the product, right? Because I can make the decisions that I need for my business, and I can build what I need. So what Hyva means for me, right? It is basically hope for Magento and me, because it's exactly what I want for my customers. And don't get me wrong, I don't think Hyva is just for small sites, but it's basically the way I want to build Magento sites on the front end. The only problem there is I'm not a front-end developer, mainly because I didn't like working with Luma, right? Or PWA Studio. So I kind of just focused on the backend task, which I enjoy a lot. So after seeing what Willem built, I felt like I want to have the same thing, right? Only for my part. I also want this kind of lightness and joy and this modern way of working and you know, taking the web for what it is. So every developer, I realized, should choose how it should be to work with Magento. And I get to choose how I want to work with Magento. You get to choose how you want to work with Magento. It's such a relief. I don't have to work with the stuff that Magento gives me. I choose what to build and how I want to work. So that's nice words, right? How does that actually look? So I would like to show you a quick example of how this works in real work. So I decided to do a quick demo. Here is a sample data installation of Magento 241. And this is the demo customer. I'm sure you're familiar with Veronica. And here's this order history grid. So I want to rebuild this grid with a little module that I built based on the same ideas that, that Willem used for Hyva on the front end. There is a big difference though, mainly on the back end, I don't want to rebuild everything, right? I just want this ease and this fun developing my own new code, right? I don't want to have to reduplicate the effort of everything that's already been done there. So I focused on, okay, I just want to create a little library, a module that I can use that makes my life easier as a backend developer. So most of my work in the backend is actually building grids and forms. So I want a library that is fun to use, building grids and forms. And because Google doesn't care how quick the admin area is, right? The idea here is we'll just add in Tailwind and Alpine on top of require.js. So everything stays there, that's already there. We're not throwing out everything. We just add the capability to build new things in a nicer way. So again, this is the grid that I want to replicate. So here's this PHP Storm instance then, right? I have the cache watcher running in the background, and here's a little test module. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to add a layout file for this page. The page is customer index edit, I think it was. Customer index edit, yes, okay. So I'll go to PHP Storm here, create a new layout file, customer index edit, so. And we need to load a single update tag. I'll just copy it over from here, like so, right? So this takes care of initializing all the Tailwind and Alpine.js onto the page so I can use it. So by the way, Willem built this. So
Vinay, sorry to interrupt, but again, screen like not showing properly.
What?
Or just you can show the final output in the browser if it's ready, because I think something wrong with screen sharing at your side.
All right. Oh, that's a shame. Okay, so I would suggest the following. I'll switch back to slides and I'll record a video of this little session. It'll be 15 minutes or so, and post that online after the conference. And instead, what I'll try is I'll just go over here and finish my presentation, and then I'll open up the room for questions. All right, so imagine the demo is done and it was amazing. Can you see the slide again?
No, you're not sharing your screen right now.
I'm not sharing my screen, really? Okay.
No, I'm afraid you have to...
I have to rejoin again. So hopefully now you can see something again.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, thank you. Oh man. I'm sorry about this. Apologies. Oh well, you'll see it soon enough. So the current state of this thing is the grids API to build grids is pretty much done. And you can imagine it looks just like the original grid, right? So only with a lot less code. So it's there. The API of the grid module is considered stable, so there won't be any backward incompatible changes. There will be some API improvements, however. I don't think that especially for filters, that's optimal already. So, but in order to improve it, it needs to be used a bit first. So I will improve that over time when it becomes apparent how to do that in an ideal way, right? But in general, it works very well, and there are a number of people already using it, and because it's already released and open source, and yeah, it's stable. So upcoming now, as I said, backward compatible API improvements for grids. And then the next big thing for this Hyva admin module is form support. That's something that I've just started working on. So I take my inspirations for those a lot from Symfony forms. It won't be quite as elaborate as Symfony forms if you're familiar with that system, because Symfony forms integrate so nicely with Doctrine, and the Magento ORM is a bit different compared to Doctrine, right? So it won't be quite the same, like nested forms won't be quite as powerful maybe, like linked entities being rendered as a subform and so on. Those might come later, but for the start, I just want to be able to give the whole thing an object that I built, like a model of a kind, and I should be able to get a grid done in 5 to 10 minutes for this object with all the forms, maybe a file upload, some selects, some input fields, some validation. All that should be handled pretty quickly. And it should also be possible to split this into different tabs, right? So it's not just one huge form, but I can group fields together in some way to make it a bit more usable. And at the same time, because it's kind of related, grid inline editing also will be a thing. But to be honest, for me at least, that's not very important. It's more like a nice to have feature. But I thought once grid support is in there, that shouldn't be a problem. And if you need grid inline editing, it's open source. So please feel free to open a pull request. People already are contributing, which I love. That shows me there's a need for this. Besides myself, people like to use it, and it's yeah. The goals are the same as the front end. It should be fun to work with. It should empower developers to get their job done quickly and with ease, and yeah, just build a solid product out of it. Actually, an open source product in this case. So you can find it under the Hyva themes GitHub organization in the Magento to Hyva admin repository. All right. So that's my part then for now. Let me stop sharing the screen here. Sorry again for the trouble. I think switching between different presenters in Zoom and coupling that seems to be causing the issue there, because in general, just sharing one stream seems to work fine, and I don't know what else could be the reason. So too bad that didn't work out.
Yeah, no problem. But you can record a video and we can share with community.
Yes, I'll do that today. So in a couple of hours, I guess I can.
Okay, and I received many questions, so let me give it to you in the chat. We have still a time for question answer.
Perfect. That's even better, maybe.
I guess that's about
the front end.
About the front end, I think. You need to rewrite things. We don't have require.js, we don't have jQuery, we don't have knockout, and most of the third-party extensions rely on those libraries. So we rewrite that. We have to move a little bit away from the mindset that things are plug and play. And well, we're rebuilding things that are plug and play, but we can't use the full the full ecosystem of current Magento third-party modules, because they're built on something that's not so good. So we can't support that because the underlying techniques are not good. So that's not portable to Hyva. What we can do is take all the backend things that a module has, take the logic that's currently in the front end, we analyze it, we clean it up, we rewrite it to simpler JavaScript, add Tailwind CSS classes, and we're done. And in most cases, it's pretty easy to clean up the JavaScript and make a simpler implementation. It doesn't always make sense to rewrite everything. We had a quick order module that had hundreds of lines of JavaScript, and we rethought that, re-implemented it, and within a day we had an Alpine.js version that uses GraphQL that's super quick to add a lot of products to the cart with GraphQL. That will take a while. We need to rebuild a library of compatible modules. We have started with that, but we're going full force on that as soon as the first version of the product is ready. So we're focusing on core features first. We want to have all the product types, wish list, compare products, everything in the customer account. So we're finishing up all those functionalities, and then we focus on the ecosystem of modules. And we're building a library together. So we will have a shared repository where all these modules go into. There'll be compatibility modules that make an existing module compatible by only adding some of the theme files that we rewrote. And documentation about compatibility. I'm just going to continue with the next question. Do you have documentation which third-party extension developer can follow to make it compatible with Hyva? We will. We still need to write a lot of documentation, which is why we can only scale up slowly currently. We have a lot of signups and we can't handle them because there's a lot of questions and we're a bit behind on writing documentation because the product itself is moving still fast to finish that first version. So how is it different than Scabby PWA? It's not a PWA, it's not JavaScript based. The core of it is an HTML website. We're building a proper website based on the technologies that we've known for decades that have evolved, that are in a beautiful state right now. JavaScript is in a beautiful state without using a JavaScript framework. We don't need a JavaScript rendered website because the browser can do most of those things without JavaScript. And then we add JavaScript on top of that. And it's a commercial product. We'll sell licenses per project. It's €1,000 for the first year, and then after that you can choose to have support packages for half of that price, but that's optional. That's per website, per store, not per store view or domain. That's a one-time fee for a merchant. Able to handle Magento upgrades? Well, yeah. So we still use the bigger part of Magento. We just added a layer on top of that with our own front-end HTML files and JavaScript. And whenever Magento updates something, the blocks that they change will also have changed. So we'll keep it up to date with the latest Magento changes. But to be very honest, Magento is not going to do that much with Luma anymore. At least that's what they've announced. Everything's going to be PWA. So I don't really expect, I would love them to bring out new features, but I don't expect them to. They haven't in the last years. It would be strange if they would start to do that right now. How can you get started with it? Well, currently we're in a closed beta and people could sign up. We're so close to release of the first version that currently we can't take up any new signups until we release the 1.0 version. But then we'll have to see if there's a form of a trial that we can introduce. At least we want to help individuals We're building it for agencies in the first place because they can accelerate the product and help building out those libraries quickest. But we don't want to leave freelancers and students behind. So we are looking how we can support them to get started without paying that fee upfront themselves. So we're thinking about how best to handle that. The well-known issues, well, you have to learn some new things, but they are fun and enjoyable. Tailwind is utility-based. It takes not so much time to be productive with it, but it does take a little bit of time to be comfortable with it, to just have the code running out of your fingers. But we see people adapting to the technologies within a week and being really productive. Then it depends on your experience and what level you are as a developer currently. But the technologies are much simpler than what Luma currently offers or what a PWA offers. Well, I'm not sure if it's you would call it an issue, but that's a different mindset now with Hyva, where you have to do customizations yourself and make third-party modules compatible yourself right now, unless you wait a few months till we have a bigger library of compatible modules. Right now, if you step in, you'll have to figure out some things yourself. Like if you need a store locator, we don't have that yet. So that will take a little bit of time. But well, we're really new. We're just building this for 6 months. We're not public yet, so the whole code base still needs to grow. And I think in 6 months it will look a lot different. You'll have a lot of options of ready-made modules.
On that note,
Okay.
just a quick note for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you, Willem and Vinay.
Thank you.
For joining the session and answer the questions. Unfortunately, Vinay was not able to share the code, live code, but no problem. Vinay will record and we will share with the community. So thank you guys again for joining. Okay. Bye. Have a nice day.